Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, AmaRouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up. Hi listeners, we are back with the final episode in the series, Pelvic Power. We really hope you've been enjoying it, learning lots, and we hope you've been connecting with our guests that we've had on the show this series. So today is an episode where Ella and I get to hang out and chat, basically.
There will be singing, there will be dancing, and there will be joy.
And there will be fans. Don't ask me why, but there will be. So many of you may know or may not know that Ella is a holistic pelvic care practitioner. And so we wanted to sit down today and talk about that and talk about what that means, what that is, how that translates, and how she came to this work. Ella is waving her beautiful certificate in my face at the moment, which I'm totally here for. And I'm going to send you a beautiful frame for that.
Oh, yay. That would be awesome. It just feels so exciting to have that. I still can't believe it. I'm a holistic pelvic care practitioner.
You are.
Wow, say wow. And I just gave my first session as a fully qualified practitioner last week. And it was beautiful. So beautiful.
Bravo. That is a huge, big step. First big step. So proud of you, Belle. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
What is holistic pelvic care for those who don't know?
Sure. So holistic pelvic care is a practice that was developed by a wonderful woman called Tammy Kent, who is an American woman. And Tammy Kent is the author of 3 amazing books, Wild Feminine, Wild Creative, and Mothering from Your Center. And she is a physio and has a multitude of skills, but one of her skills is she's developed this very specific practice. So she uses a mixture of more Western practices like myofascial release and then more kind of meditative and spiritual practices. The work is really about the principle that we as human beings, anything that happens to us in the world, and that could actually also be like a kind of a global event, as well as something that literally happens to us as a human being, they make kind of imprints on our body. So essentially they create a trauma imprint on our body. The work of Tammy Kent is that these imprints or these traumas are actually specifically held in the pelvic bowl area. And I'm saying pelvic bowl because it's not kind of gender specific. It's not womb specific. It's actually about this area of the body, and that is where the imprint is held.
Okay.
And so, fascinating, right? And so the work, it's a mixture of hands-on work and really working with moving the fascia that we can hold in this area with this kind of more meditative process of going in and understanding what's holding here. And it's for me, I got into it because I was experiencing it for myself first and just had the most profound changes. I just experienced such an incredible freeing and release and, tears and so on as well. But for me, this was why it was so life-changing for me that I knew that I needed to to continue the work, and eventually ended up training in it.
This is beautiful and amazing, and also I love that full circleness of it. Did you, you said it had a profound effect on you, and there was a sense of freeing. Did you feel that both physically and in terms of kind of choices that you were then able to go on and make afterward?
Absolutely. And I would say everything, like, so I do have some kind of trauma stories in this space, as I think many human beings do. And that was one part, was like, having not been able to hold my boundaries in the past. I felt that this was a real experience of practicing that, and also just seeing this body part, this area of the body, as not just like a place where we experience sex, but a place where we experience power, and we understand the connection of intuition with this space, but also we understand that we can heal without it having to be about a sexual experience. We can heal, and it can just be about our own root and our own connection to ourselves.
Banging. Yeah. I'm doing finger clicks in my mind, because seriously, like, amazing. How often do we actually have a relationship towards our pelvic space like that? I feel more we're waking up to that, but it feels like a fairly new concept for me.
Me too.
For quite a lot of people. So how, you said that you received holistic pelvic care. Is that something that you found out about and opted to go and have? Is it something that someone told you about? How did you actually learn about it?
Sure. So it was really lush as well, the journey with Tammy Kent. So I first came across her work via meditation. Someone kind of did this meditation and mentioned Tammy Kent's name, and it was so profound, that experience of that one meditation. This was probably about 4 years ago, something, that I was like, let me search out who this human is. And I found the first book that I read was Wild Feminine. And, I was just like, it was really those books, those books that are like so well used that they're like weathered, like that's that book for me. It's like, it's so well loved. So that was like the first thing that happened. But it's kind of like a beautiful synchronous series of events that actually started with lots of difficult stuff. So it all started because I was speeding, Amma. I used to have a really beautiful little car that I was speeding up the motorway from Bristol to Leeds, and I got spotted, didn't I?
Uh-oh.
Damn it. And I got summoned back to Bristol to do my, you do your speeding correctional training.
Yeah.
So that was the start of this journey. So I got to this car park in Bristol, and I got out of the car on a really wet, typical UK day. Yay. And basically, for some reason in this car park, they had these like wooden slats that were soaking wet and like slightly rotten. Clever thing for a car park. So I got out of my car, stepped onto one, and whoom, like did the most epic fail slip. Yeah, those like really like, oh my God, yeah, this is really happening. And I'm lying on the floor looking up, and I landed like on my coccyx.
That's literally
and actually hand as well.
That's my nightmare.
Oh, it was like the whole of that training. As much, actually, I'm quite impressed. The correctional speed training is pretty fun, considering like I was not expecting to actually be laughing for quite a lot of the session. But I was laughing with ice. I had an ice on a thumb and like an ice pack on my pelvis, and then like over the next few days, I realised, you know what, I've actually really hurt myself. So I wrote to the hotel, and it was like one of those like, have you heard an accident at work things where the hotel were like, oh, we'd better give her some money. And so they did.
Brilliant.
Yay.
Good.
And basically with that money, I went to the osteo, to this wonderful osteo in Bristol. I believe they're called the Family Practice, and they're wonderful. And the woman that was treating me, she's called Juliana, and she's like in this really lush space with all these amazing books, and we're having great chats. And then she says to me, and so Ella, when are you going to be also dealing with the trauma that's held in this pelvic area? And it's like, you know, those little penny drops of like, I knew there was trauma there. You know, it's like the question was actually a question I'd been asking myself of like, when am I going to release, when am I going to face this, and when am I going to do something about it? And like, you know, there was a little tear that trickled out my eye, but at the same time, it was like, yes, Juliana, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let's go, you know, like, tell me.
And how wide and connected of her to recognize that and ask you the question in such a way which was more like, are you going to address this? Because
it was so powerfully profound, such a and I felt really held by her as well. So, you know, just like hats off to Juliana. She's a beautiful human being. But so then she said, like, we carried on talking. I kind of talked about wild feminine and that's something I was really interested in. I've been doing these meditations. And she's like, oh, well, you could always work with Helen Hodder. And I'm like, who's Helen Hodder? And it turns out that Helen Hodder is based at the same practice, kind of comes in like maybe once a month or once a week to do holistic pelvic care sessions at this osteopath centre in Bristol. Right? Like,
why do we not know about this? Why is it not something that is publicised, is common knowledge?
Totally. But I think it is so specific that you kind of have to know and have those conversations for that flow to open up. So yeah, I'm so grateful that that conversation happened, because then not much later I was having a treatment with Helen Hodder. And it was just absolutely profound to, you know, I'd been doing the sessions myself, but not in the same way, not hands-on, just the meditations. And this was the first time of like experiencing this process. And it's for me, like, I'm really interested in kind of combining it with the Wheel of Consent work. So also those questions about being ready and being empowered to say yes or no, being quite a profound part of the work.
And by the way, I'm not sure what Ella's referring to when she says the Wheel of Consent, we have a couple of episodes with Robin Dowson about the Wheel of Consent earlier on in season 1. So check that out.
So so this session, you know, it was just really profound. And then, I mean, the beauty as well of holistic pelvic care is Tammy Kent isn't someone who says, I need to treat you forever. It's the idea is that you'll have 1 or 2 sessions and then you can continue the work yourself. You can get to know your own body and you can continue the work. And so
I love that there's that aspect of
me too,
self-administering and self-healing, self-treating, self-empowerment. It's like you receive this initial healing and then it's almost, you know, it's handed over to you so you can continue that relationship with your body yourself. And I think there's
absolutely
so much power in that. And it is something, you know, I feel for me, it brings up conversations around that have been had and are had around knowing our bodies, self-treating, different types of healing, treatment, medication versus synthetic, and doctors, and I feel that, you know, both science and nature have their places, and I think they're both really beneficial. For me, I'm not saying one should be present and one should be absent, but there's definitely conversation going on about us returning to knowledge about our bodies and acquiring knowledge about what we need, how we can self-treat, how we can self-heal, maybe alongside other treatment we might be receiving or other support we might be receiving, but actually returning to understanding how our bodies work and what our needs are, rather than always handing over complete autonomy to a medical practitioner, for example. So there's like a beautiful duality there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, like, because the practice is co-led, so it's a very intuitive practice, which, as you know, I'm an intuitive coach. So it just like everything feels so synchronized of what I'm doing and how this practice kind of comes into my other work. And also like how this work supports you to be even more intuitive. Like I know my intuition comes from my sacral chakra, comes from this space. So it's like the work helps one to connect even more to your intuition, but also that it is co-led. So it's not just me, it's not about me speaking to the person receiving the treatment. It's about us going on a journey, and it's about the feedback, and it's about going on that journey together. And it's just incredible. Honestly, Amma, it's the best work ever.
And it sounds super healing as well, as the person receiving the treatment also taking that power over, realigning that space, being part of the process to do that, to find that equilibrium there.
And I'd love, like, that word equilibrium for me is the other kind of really important aspect of the work. And linking back to our interview with Moonlight Motherhood talked about finding balance and coming back home to yourself in terms of kind of this patriarchal world that we live in, and how in our world we kind of disconnect from the divine feminine. And the work actually works a lot with the masculine and the feminine within us, which I'm a big believer in. We all have masculine and we all have feminine within us, like regardless of our gender. And it's about the finding balance within that, within our own bodies, of what our unique balance is. Not like it's this much and this much depending on your gender. It's about finding that balance within you that is your own kind of, I'm making this infinity symbol with my hands, like, that it's almost like this, and that we are marrying essentially our own inner masculine and feminine, so that we live in harmony with ourselves. And it's not like we're kind of living this life of polarity, of like one inner authority saying one thing and another saying another. We're really finding that balance and coming back home to that place of balance and union within us, which is essentially yoga. So I just love all the connections of this work and the practices that I've been following.
And what do you hope for this work?
So for me, this work it's really about supporting people to come back home to themselves. And again, like, this is kind of, I think, what I'm interested in life. And
this is woven in all of your work. I know you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you saying that straight away, I'm like, this is Ella's work.
Yeah. And kind of linking back as well to the unlearning in terms of boundaries. I think it's a really important work in terms of the healing that we need to do in our world, and this releasing of trauma imprints that are held in our bodies, but also in terms of our own past. And that often we kind of, we're popped out into a world where we might learn about sexual relationships being disempowering or based on external ideas of what pleasure is, but not really listening to us. And for me, pleasure is connected to intuition. The two things are kind of one in the same. And so as we reconnect to what is pleasure for us and what is empowering to us, we also reconnect to our intuition, and we come back home to our bodies.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am AmaRouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.